off, and they get it to Jordan. Here's trouble. 3-on-3, Jordan in deep. Jordan all the way! Score!
He's the man who taught the world to fly. Michael Jordan, 6-time champion, 5-time MVP. The jump man who turned a sneaker into religion. He made arenas tremble, turned clutch into ritual, and stamped his name into the American heartbeat. But behind the trophies, the commercials, the empire, there is a darker life most cameras never watched. A life shaped by sudden losses, quiet wounds, and a loneliness fame could not cure. This is not praise. This is the other side. The truth that made a legend. Michael was born in Wilmington, North Carolina, into a working-class home where discipline was love and expectation was oxygen. His father, James R. Jordan Sr., was the constant, the mentor with grease on his hands who taught a boy to swing a bat and to keep his pride straight. But competition lived in the family too, and the first crack came not from the court, but from a high school hallway. At 15, Michael was cut from varsity, not because he couldn't play, but because he hadn't yet become the machine he would be. For a kid who later rewrote gravity, that cut landed like an axe. He went home and cried. He told the camera later that night's silence rewired him. Rejection became obsession. He woke before dawn. He practiced until his joints burned. The humiliation didn't break him. It produced a hunger so gnawing it would haunt every game he played. His father was the anchor for that hunger, always filming from the stands, always the first to clap. That man's faith was a compass. So when fate delivered the cruelest of blows on July 23, 1993, when James Jordan was ambushed and murdered while sitting in his car, everything Michael had built on that compass fell away. One phone call, one impossible day, and the world's greatest competitor learned a different language. Grief. It was not a private grief he could tuck away. It was raw, public, and seismic. 2 months later, stunned and hollow, Michael announced his first retirement. He left at the top, yes, but he left because the ground beneath him had vanished. Then he tried to live for the man he'd lost. He traded hardwood for minor league baseball with the Birmingham Barons, wearing number 45 like an offering to his father's dream. It was not triumph. It was ritual. The public mocked. The press scoffed. But he endured, morning after morning. Swinging not to be great at baseball, but to prove he could answer the voice that never spoke again. When he returned in March 1995 and whispered the 2 words the world still remembers, "I'm back," it wasn't a marketing moment. It was a resurrection. He came back quieter, harder, wrapped in grief that had sharpened his will into something close to ruthless. The Bulls rose. The city exhaled. He rebuilt a dynasty and delivered the unforgettable, the flu game. The Last Shot in 1998, works of art born of pain. And yet, even as the legend burned brighter, personal life was eroding in slow motion. Michael married young, Juanita Vanoy, in 1989, and they had 3 children. On paper, it looked like the American dream. Rings, houses, perfect family snapshots. But the very excellence that created empires also devoured ordinary presence. Road games, endorsements, endless flights turned husband into ghost. The cracks weren't explosive. They were the quiet kind that creep in when a man chooses to be everywhere but home. Their split played out under a merciless microscope. The divorce finalized in 2006 with headlines about a $168 million settlement. and tabloids turned private grief into spectacle. But the money was not the wound. The real injury was the slow vanishing of the life he had promised to protect. Bedtime stories missed, school recitals unattended. The father's chair growing cold. For a man who measured himself by control, losing the home he once thought unbreakable cut deeper than any public defeat. Pain repeated itself in quieter forms. He lost not only his father, but those who became fathers to him. Gus, his longtime bodyguard and steady presence after his father's death, became that rock. When Gus died of cancer in 2000, Michael buried another pillar of emotional safety. He had, by his 30s, buried two father figures. That kind of accumulation of grief does something to a man. It teaches him that strength must sometimes be stoic and private, that rock-solid silence becomes the only armor left. And then, in a cruel echo, another loss shocked the world. Kobe Bryant, the player who studied Michael like a disciple, the kid who called him at odd hours, hungry for advice, the rival who became family, died in the helicopter crash of January 2020, along with his daughter Gianna and 7 others. The news hit Michael like a physical blow. Kobe was not merely a younger player or a rival. He was the living mirror of Michael's own fire. Beyond loss, Michael also bore injuries of ego and identity. The intense drive that pushed him to dominate, to demand perfection, also pushed people away. The decades of single-minded pursuit left traces. Fractured relationships, estranged friends, a marriage dissolved. Fame blunted empathy at times. The persona of invincibility made private tenderness harder to sustain. His affairs with absence were not dramatic tabloids of scandal with mistresses and betrayals. They were the everyday betrayals of time, a father missing a soccer game, a child asking why daddy was on a plane again. And yet Jordan's response to pain always bent toward construction. After the Bulls dynasty, he built bigger things, the Jordan brand that revolutionized sports culture, franchise ownership, smart investments. He turned hunger into capital, grief into discipline. Today, his net worth lands in the billions. But money didn't fix the deepest scars. It bought control. Yes, it bought systems that shielded him from the crowd. It also allowed him to choose what matters: family, privacy, and a quieter life. What remains beneath the flash and the wealth is a man who learned to armor himself with purpose because he had to. He learned to love again, to remarry, to raise more children, to be present in ways he had not been before. He learned to let the world see the raw edges occasionally, the funeral tears, the unfinished calls. The small apologies expressed in action instead of press conferences. Here is the lesson the highlight reels never teach. Greatness doesn't cancel grief. It doesn't erase the slow ache of a missing voice at your worst hour. It doesn't exempt you from the quiet implosions at home. Michael Jordan built an empire with a heart that bled in private. His brilliance was forged on the anvil of loss. A father's death, a guardian's passing, the sudden empty air where a young life should have been. Those losses didn't derail him. They tempered him into a man who understood that trophies are brittle and human bonds are precious. So when you remember the slam dunks and the signature sneakers, remember also the silence after the win. Remember the boy who cried after being cut, the man who left basketball to mourn, the son who buried a father, and the mentor who took him in, the friend he lost to tragedy, the marriage that fractured under the weight of duty. That shadow is not shameful. It is the truth that made him human. If you respect that truth, if it moves you the way it moved him, take a small action. Hit like, share his story, and let that human version of the legend reach someone who thinks heroes have no scars. Because the hardest victories are often the quiet ones. Waking up after loss and choosing to fight again, to be a better father, a different man, to turn private wounds into public lessons.